So first off, thank you for joining Kenny and I. This is a SHRM certified webinar, and it's entitled What America's Workplace Will Look Like Tomorrow. And it's May 1st, and with Texas, America's largest state, loosening restrictions for the first time today, it seems like a really fitting date to talk about what non-essential employee workplaces may start looking like when many businesses are permitted to begin reopening. There's no question March and April took an emotional, a physical, and an economic toll on all of us. No one knows exactly what the future looks like until there's a vaccine. There's still a lot of uncertainty, but rather than dwelling on all of the negatives and the what ifs, we've collected some learnings, observations, and the latest research to provide some insights into what we might expect to see in the future that could actually help improve your employee experience. So before we dive in, here's some background on Kenny and I. My name is Lori, and I'm the VP of Recognition for CSISTARS. I spent a good part of my day researching, writing, and supporting our team and clients with recognition resources and ideas. Our company is, really helps employees recognize, helps companies recognize and reward their employees. And our company mission is to encourage small acts of recognition multiplied by many to enhance lives and cultures, and that really guides everything that we do. And joining me today is Kenny, and Kenny is an awesome guy. I met him through a virtual networking event last month, and he really spoke from the heart about how his clients are managing, how this pandemic is affecting people now, and what the workplace is likely to look like in the future. And so I thought our clients and others would really benefit from what Kenny has to say. So I asked if he'd like to join me in hosting a webinar, and he accepted, and here we are. So Kenny, maybe you could share a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So hello, everybody. My name is Kenny Delcazada, and I am a staffing consultant based out of Houston, Texas. Currently, I am the business development manager for MK Personnel, as well as our sister brand, Hunter and Sage. As a company, we facilitate a start-to-finish recruitment process for our clients and have done so for over 20 years on a local and national basis. I'd like to start off by thanking Lori and Tracy, as well as the rest of the CSISTARS team, for having me on this webinar, and I hope to shed some light on what to expect as we return to a normal life, or a normal as possible life, right? And I also hope to create a sense of confidence that through this disruption, there will be plenty of new opportunities that emerge.
Thank you so much, Kenny. So over the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to cover a few things. We're going to start off and we're going to talk about what the business community has learned and is still learning from this pandemic. We'll talk about the cost savings and benefits of a remote workforce, and then what America's future workplace and workforce might look like as we transition back. And then we'll finish off with some technologies and strategies to connect and motivate a more permanently dispersed group of teams. We'll leave 10 minutes at the end for questions, so just post them in the chat as you think of them, and we'll try to answer them all at the end. And as I mentioned, this is a SHRM certified webinar, so if you're looking for your professional development credit, I'll be sending out an email on Monday with the recording of this webinar, along with some employer toolkit resources. And if you'd like a SHRM credit, just respond to that email, and I'll make sure you get that certification number. Okay, so we'll get started. So you're not likely to be too surprised to learn that according to an April 2020 SHRM study of over 2,200 HR professionals, over 3/4 of employers now have employees working from home. And I'm guessing many of us were caught scrambling to get our customer care, our leadership, and our other teams set up at home with technologies in place to connect and keep our businesses going. This crisis forced employers to do inside a week what would normally take organizations months or even years to roll out company-wide. This urgency combined with the stress of the virus is enormous. It really is, and it is unprecedented. And we've all, been doing our best to adapt to new technology tools in a new work environment, with many of us juggling kids at home, along with an incredible amount of uncertainty about the future and ourselves and our families and our businesses. So if you didn't feel prepared, you're not alone. I haven't met anyone yet who saw this coming and was ready for it. And in terms of readiness, there's some interesting learnings from the same SHRM study that talks about readiness. And in fact, 34% of employers did not have an emergency preparedness plan prior to COVID-19. 2/3 had an emergency preparedness plan, but over half of those companies didn't include communicable disease response in those plans. So, the speed of having to create this remote workplace virtually overnight exposed us to a lot of inefficiencies in our systems and in our business processes. It may have also unveiled some sole dependencies you weren't aware of, and it forced, all of us to kind of look at our, our scheduling, our shifts, and backup plans in case people got sick. And so I imagine you're probably still adapting a little bit, and you will continue to adapt to close those gaps. For us here at CSISTARS, this pandemic actually brought to light just how much we can get done and how well our team can rally together when there's a sense of urgency and strong leadership. We're on about day 49, I think it is here, not that I'm counting, and we're starting to settle into our abnormal normal routines. Our government, they haven't loosened restrictions yet, but they're experimenting and talking about how to transition us back to that normal that's probably not really normal. There are a lot of people out of work and a lot of people suffering, but rather than dwelling on that, because you can read all about that in the newspaper, we're going to focus more on the opportunities and the strengths that you can bring out for your company during and after this crisis ends. So I'm going to hand it over to Kenny now to talk a little bit about what companies are likely to see in terms of potential cost savings and workplace benefits to come out of this pandemic.
All right, so it's no secret that the COVID pandemic has highlighted severe inefficiencies from operational processes, communication disconnect, and budget misappropriation. As Lori stated earlier, our new normal will be anything but normal. Instead, we will see a rollout of alternative ways to conduct day-to-day business, and the direct benefit will be cost savings for both employers and employees alike. So from an employer perspective, the cost savings in commercial real estate and employee burdens will have a positive effect for the bottom line as well as the overall budget. So what does this look like, right? This might mean more job sharing, more part-time employees to keep headcount down while business is operating slower than normal. Also, with fewer filled seats, this could mean some companies reduce their commercial real estate costs and employee burdens, like salaries and insurances, with a possible savings of 3 to 4%. A typical employer can save about 11 grand a year for every person who works remotely half of the time. And the study by Gartner also revealed that 74% of CFOs expect to move a number of previously on-site employees to remote work permanently post-COVID for these exact reasons. So on the other side of the spectrum, a remote workforce is also a win for employees. According to Global Workforce Analytics, they found that employees can potentially save between $2,500 and $4 grand a year working remote half the time. They could also increase these savings if they're able to transition to work from home full time. Additional savings from this that employees can see are a reduction in expenses in transportation costs, so gas, maintenance, tolls, parking, their residential real estate costs. Employees may be able to find a more cost-effective area to live in. Also, dining expenses. Most employees at a corporate level, they're typically eating out day to day. Now that they're working from home, most employees just cook at home and eat there. So there's a savings there. So aside from saving money, what are the other benefits that have been identified with the remote workforce? So I found a couple, just really been analyzing the situation as well as networking with other professionals. A couple key things. So we saw that there was found time. With an additional 1 to 2 hours a day, employees are finding that they are able to accomplish more in their day. Obviously, they're reducing that travel time. They're able to be at their desk a lot sooner. Therefore, they're checked in and they're able to get their work done. We've also seen environmental benefits. So reducing commuter travel is an easy way to decrease our carbon footprint. And according to the Global Workplace Analytics, the annual environmental impact of part-time remote work would be the greenhouse gas equivalent of taking the entire New York State workforce off the road. That's pretty incredible, as well as better work-life balance and work-life integration. And at this point, I'm pretty sure we've all seen it. What's more entertaining than being on a Zoom conference call and you're hearing your accounting employee discipline their teenager, or we always get the random cameo from some of our furry friends. A couple pets just jump in there to say hello to the team. Surprisingly, we've seen an increase in production. So from Fundera, they did a research that found that 2/3 of managers that offer telecommuting are finding their employees are more productive. Again, going back on my point, they're reducing their commuting time. They're able to clock in, get their work done at a more effective pace. Also, we'll see economical opportunities. So I believe we're going to see some freelance, some consultation opportunities that will rise as employees maximize their earning potential by potentially working for multiple companies at one time. So let's kind of switch gears here. Lori, will you kind of go in depth on our workplace reset and how we'll conduct business post-COVID?
Yes, thanks, Kenny. Yeah, the reset. Personally, I think this crisis has probably caused a reset for all of us on an individual level. For me personally, I feel like I have a better perspective on what's important, my family and health. And so many of you may be feeling the same way. From a professional level, it's also reset employers and employees' mentality in terms of what can get done away from the office. Positions previously viewed as not conducive to working from home may actually be working just fine. So now the shift is going to be what supports do managers and employees need, and what HR policies need to be updated now so that people who have discovered this new way of working and may not want to go back to the way it was before can be successful and effective. Talking about sort of pre-COVID, Gallup did a study, and their research showed that 80% of people before all of this happened said that they wanted to work from home at least some of the time, and 51% would change jobs to work from home. So now that some of those tasks and jobs that managers really assumed couldn't be done from home have been getting done quite well, it's changing our managers' mentality and providing a strong case for continued work from home options. And for those tasks that can't really be done from home, we're now having to begin those discussions with employees. Just because the government says it's okay to go back to work, I'm sure some of you are finding that some of your employees are nervous and are not comfortable returning. Many of your employees this spring and summer are going to struggle with anxiety and fear of getting back on the subway, on the bus, or being in an office with recirculated air or closer to more people. This quarantine sort of state of mind is going to persist for some folks. Those who contracted the virus or know people who have fallen sick will be especially on edge. Employees with underlying conditions or family members who are immune compromised may even refuse to return to work for fear of bringing it home. I read somewhere that this fear of missing out is going to be replaced with the fear of going out. And ironically, this could even be particularly more pronounced for your younger employees, those interns and Gen X employees entering the workforce. This generation is known to be, they're the most diverse and best educated ever, but they're also the most anxious. And so you might have to start thinking about ways of changing their hours so that they're not working in peak times to avoid the busy commute, and some other kind of work arrangements to help them, get back into the workplace, the traditional workplace. And then with your older workers, you might even be better off letting them stay from home, given their higher risk. It's going to be tricky. I think that over the spring and summer, it's going to be, everyone's going to be trying to figure it out. But I hope by fall, we'll find that people are adapting to this new reality, and that with proper safety precautions, they won't be nearly as nervous. I also think that society will start recognizing that while this virus is terrible, it may not be as dangerous if we're careful, if we wear gloves and masks and wash our hands, and that, hopefully by fall, we'll all be a lot less stressed and stretched. And so that's my hope. And others smarter than me feel the same way. Kate Lister, I found an article that she had written. She's the president of Global Workplace Analytics, and she's been studying remote work trends for more than a decade, and she forecasts that about 25 to 30 million employees will regularly work from home within the next 2 years. So only about 5 million are working from home before, even halftime before this crisis started. So if she's right, 25 to 30% of the workforce will be working from home at least a few days a week. And that's going to require a significant shift in how companies change their physical workplace.
Hey guys, looks like we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Just bear with us as we get Lori back logged in.
I'm back. Can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
We hear you.
Oh, when did I bond? What time? At what point did I?
In. So through that lens, the efforts to keep people separated may help for a brief encounter, but they probably don't go far enough in spaces that many human bodies are sharing for 8 or more hours at a time, especially spaces that are notoriously poorly ventilated, such as office buildings. We'll also see more hot desking. I think we're going to see more companies ditch desks, dividers, as well as shift away from your traditional office spaces and evolve more into co-working spaces with shared facilities for teams, customer meeting spaces, training rooms, and event facilities that support flexible working. There's lots of room for improvement, and a more free range approach is likely to be incorporated in several industries across the board. For example, consulting companies like Deloitte have been hot desking and hoteling for years. Also, Credit Suisse has 2 hot desking offices. Square and Ecobee have a completely open floor plan where all of their employees can interact with their executives, and it makes it easier for people across departments to collaborate. So you'll see a lot of that open layout plan just to make sure that everybody's practicing safe distancing and things of that nature. Also, I think we're going to go away from hugs and handshakes. With elbow bumps and foot taps and kind of your namastes, will those continue after the crisis? That's kind of TBD at this point. When I was looking into sentiments on this, I thought it was interesting to learn about how a handshake originated. So in ancient Greece, it was common practice for 2 people to show each other that they weren't holding a weapon by raising their hand to each other. And so that's kind of how the handshake evolved. So what started out as a way of avoid being killed has turned into a way of avoid getting sick. So the current workplace norms around handshakes and hugs will continue for safety reasons, obviously, for as long as the pandemic lasts. It takes quite a while for new norms to take root, but it is possible there is lasting change, especially amongst younger generations. If they grow up in a pandemic era and only know a world of social distancing, it may be strange for them to go back to hugs and handshakes in the office like that's in our norm pre-COVID, right? We'll also see a shift in policies as well as technology. Before employees start returning to work on site, employers are starting to define and refine their current processes and policies to address a change in critical workplace issues. So social distancing may now be a company mandate rather than a suggestion, while meeting rooms may have capacity limits, and the checking of employees' temperatures when they arrive each day may also start being required for a lot of companies. HR should really review its flexible workplace policy and to determine whether it makes sense to update them by making them more robust. be prepared to explain in advance which jobs will be permitted to continue via telework, which won't, and why. Some of your employees or colleagues may opt out and may not come back possibly after this. So kind of to switch gears into what the from a employee standpoint, what is this going to bring light to, right? So I really believe there's a strong possibility of recession causing employers to rethink the who, where, and how of work. So we may see a rise in a lot of freelancers, more entrepreneurs, some contractors, as these positions are remote from work, and employers are starting to see, hey, if we 1099 or we just contract with some of these individuals, we could save on our bottom line as well as continue to get our work done. We're going to see a lot of innovation in the short term with this. So as y'all started seeing now, there's tons of online resources that are coming on board and new learning tools for everybody across different sectors all around. So a major shift in technologies that we depend on to connect and motivate and measure KPIs and things of that nature. You're going to see tons of innovation within that space that's going to help work from home, work remote, integrate with regular office life as we move forward. So Lori, can you shed some light on challenges we may see from a remote workforce, please?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Kenny. Just to build on your point about the technologies, I actually think that that's going to be probably the easier part of all of this. I think the harder job is going to be to have the leadership that's needed to make sure that your managers recognize the importance of interpersonal connections, that that they're skilled in coaching and that they're supporting their people from a distance, that they can figure out how to get things done from a distance, and perpetuating your culture, your values, and your morale. So as you can see from this slide, maintaining morale and a sense of your company culture is really a big concern now. Employers have expressed that already through the SHRM survey that was just done 2 weeks ago. 2/3 of companies are struggling with morale, 1/3 are finding it hard to maintain their culture, and 1/3 are seeing increased needs for employee assistance programs. So you may feel, you may fit into this boat too and feel the same way. So it's really going to take a cohesive effort on the part of executives and managers to keep this dispersed workforce feeling connected. Communication, consistency, caring, those are going to be key words as you move forward, updating your policies, your professional development, and your technologies. Managers, they are going to be the biggest factor in making this remote work, especially now, right now, when many employees are feeling lonely and scared and stressed with today's uncertainty. A Harvard professor, Dr. Anthony Brooks, spoke about this at a recent SHRM webinar that I listened to, and he talked about, the more your managers can take the job of worrying away from your employees, the calmer and more productive their teams are going to be. That it's really, the manager needs to take that worry and let the employees focus on what they can control, which is their job. So that's one way that you can coach your managers in helping in the short term and then in the long term too, in helping your employees stay, calm their nerves. Another way to strengthen the employee manager bond is to reinforce that it's not all about business, that, the number one source of stress and unhappiness is having a bad boss or a boss that you're uneasy with. So, encouraging your managers to make time idle chit chat in the office when people come back, also online, just asking how things are going on a personal level, that can really help calm the nerves and reduce stress. And I do think that this pandemic has made that more real and more possible. Like, I feel like we all, there's a sense of humanity now. Like we see our colleagues in a different light. We're hearing, their kids playing Fortnite and dogs barking, and you can kind of glimpse into their office space and where they're living. And I think that work-night life integration is really good, and I hope that it continues on as we go forward and get over this pandemic. For HR, from your perspective too, it's going to likely mean that you're going to need to invest in more people management professional development training and strategic initiatives to equip your managers and to reinforce the importance of those softer skills going forward. I work with Dean Hannon. He's the founder of Drive Engagement, and Dean likes to refer to strategic recognition as the money ball for engagement, and I love that. Using assessments, he helps managers identify the employee's unique motivators and personality traits to strengthen those team bonds and engagement. And I can see HR investing more money in those types of learning opportunities to improve their managers' people skills. So that's sort of like on a strategic level. I'm going to pass over to Kenny to talk a little bit about some tips at a practical, actionable level right now that you can do to foster better employee-manager connections.
Right. So from a practical perspective, there are some really simple and effective ways to coach your managers now. We created this quick little infographic on 5 simple things managers can do every day to help their team members feel they're well informed, connected, as well as cared about. So if you take a glance at the right, there's a couple points I wanted to go through. So we'll start at the top. Give thanks. So find ways to praise your colleagues and team. I know within our organization, we find simple things that we could just examine the wins of the day, something like that, where the team feels connected. We feel like we've gotten some momentum behind us, and we keep going. The next one is get on board. So if you don't have one, find a tool, a communication tool that you can use as a consistent platform to create some synchrony there. And piggybacking off of that, communicate regularly. So find time to engage with your team often, whether that's set out a couple meetings each week or do some impromptu drop-ins around working hours or peak hours, whatever have you. Make sure that your team knows you're there. Communicate with them, find out how they're doing, see how their desk is going, and see if you can lend a hand or whatnot, as well as ask for their thoughts. So understand how they're doing. So that's piggybacking off of that communication piece. We're starting to find that there is some PTSD associated with the COVID pandemic, and frankly, just being in the house all day has a little bit of a cabin fever feel to it. So it's really good to understand where your team's at on a mental note. And the last piece here is maintain a routine. So obviously, when we went into this, basically our whole routine was all thrown off. That's just the easy way to say it. Create a routine for yourself and encourage your colleagues and your team members to do the same. And make sure that routine is based around healthy practices. So making sure you get an adequate night's sleep, making sure you're hydrating, you're eating the right foods, you're making time for mental health as well as physical fitness. That way you make sure that your team is all aligned and that they have the best mindset to move forward and be effective within the practice.
Thanks, Kenny. And in terms of mindset, I think you're probably all seeing this as we have, that recognition really does have a way of calming the nerves and boosting the spirit. I'm sure that you've received some recognition over the last 2 months, and it does give you brighten your day and kind of give you that little boost to help you get up the next day. And so that's really important. Recognition really, really is important right now. And in fact, a survey by the American Psychological Association found that workers who say their managers recognize them and feel valued are more satisfied with their jobs and more motivated to do their best. And they're also likely to report a lot less chronic work stress. So it is really important, but the challenge is to get everyone recognizing consistently, right? The problem in many cases is that managers have a blind spot when it comes to recognition. Adrian Gostick and Chester Elton, they're authors of New York Times Leading with Gratitude book. They did a study and found that 67% of managers think they are above average in offering praise and recognition, but only 23% of employees agree. So there is a real blind spot there. And you know, it's not easy. Managing people is probably the hardest, most unpredictable job there is out there. You know, managers are faced with limited resources, limited time to coach. They're expected to get their own job done all the time with eyes on their engagement scores and productivity. So it's really important from an HR perspective to give those managers the supports that they need in terms of strategies, tactics, and tools to enable them to recognize frequently and reward strategically so that they can create these better people managers. HR is really the teachers in all of this, providing, you know, informal guidance and then putting the formal strategic programs and tools in place so that their managers can be successful. So I just want to go through so 3 ways that you can really help support your managers now and moving forward. And the first one is the 3 C's: communicate, communicate, communicate. You know, we don't all have the answers, but with open communication with your teams, you know, they'll be a lot more likely to be able to cope in transition. So the first C relates to furloughed employees. So, you know, even though they're not with you in the workplace, communicating with those temporarily laid off or furloughed employees is really important. They're in no man's land. They need to feel that connection to your company, and it'll be a lot easier for you when you need to bring them back. At CSI, we actually have an All-Stars staff newsletter that we put out every Tuesday to all of our working and furloughed employees. We have updates on the business, and we try and add a little humor into it too. So last week it was kind of at the expense of our managers because they're taking over a lot of the production tasks, and so we took a couple of pictures of them and poked fun at how long it was taking them to get the work done. And you know, it did help. People appreciated it, and so I encourage you to not only communicate with your working employees, but with the furloughed employees as well. And then in terms of regular internal communications, that's key to avoid, you know, confusion and concerns and complaints. The more that you can be very consistently have a cadence with your communication, as Kenny spoke with, that will really help. From our perspective, our president holds a daily meeting at 10:30 with our executive team, and he updates us on the business, and we have a chance to ask questions, and it really feels like we're in it together. In March, when we started those meetings, they were about 25 minutes long, and now sometimes they're 5 minutes. Sometimes they're a bit longer, and we each present to each other kind of updates on what we're doing. It's gone over really well. It's really helped the team gel. And I know a company CEO who has over 500 employees, and he does a 5 to 10 minute sync up with his entire company every single day to make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction and knows what's happening with the organization. And when you're working from home, that does actually add a lot of needed structure to the day. So those are kind of 3 tips that you could take away right now. Actually, I give you 2. The third is the returning employees. So once your employees come back, it'll be really important to talk to them about the policies, their benefit changes. Some employees may have reduced their contributions, and others who are returning to work may need to elect those benefits again. So it's really important to update your documents and plans to describe those new rules and communicate to employees clearly. That'll be really important as you transition back. Then the second point is to recognize a little and an often. We find that works best. We do truly believe that small acts of recognition, when multiplied by many, have the power to transform your culture. And that means 70% of recognition should really be non-monetary and meaningful. We're always recommending to managers to, book 10 minutes at the end of their day to thank 3 people. It could be a quick voicemail thanking an employee for making them look good, an email complimenting an employee on hosting a productive web meeting, or simply just giving a kudos through your recognition platform so everyone can see the great work that the team or the individual did. Another tip that is really good at calming the nerves is starting or ending your calls recognizing a team member or an individual. That is really helpful. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. And I'm sure a lot of you are doing that, but I just thought I would mention it. And the more specific, the more authentic and individual the thanks, the more impact it's going to have and the more motivating it's going to be to your employees. And if you need help firing up those managers, because some are better at giving thanks than others, you can start showing what's in it for me. So here's a good study that I found. It was from the Psychological Science magazine, and it talked about how recipients of thank you messages perceive the sender as being warmer and more competent. They view the the person that gives recognition as smarter. So that might help get some of your managers recognizing more. And then for those managers who respond better to facts, if you have a digital recognition platform, you can actually track the managers who excel in giving recognition and then correlate that to their team's performance and vice versa. And while I don't really subscribe to shaming, this type of data can be really helpful to identify the recognition Scrooges and then help them see how the impact of thanking people can have on their business. So I just want to kind of segue into the next point there regarding peer-to-peer social recognition. So that's going to be super important as we go forward. You know, managers are going to have to learn how to adjust their styles, but also embrace platforms rather than rely on those on the office FaceTime. You've been using tools probably like Zoom and Teams and Skype to connect, but there are also many peer-to-peer recognition platforms that can really bring people together across the company, you know, with streamlined ways to disseminate information, share, like, and comment all the good things that your people are doing, congratulating each other on milestones, and, you know, just generally making it easier for managers to reward and recognize exceptional efforts and accomplishments. There are many recognition platforms out there that enhance communications and that equip managers with those easy to use tools. We've been really, it's been exciting for me to see from our perspective that we have so many service award clients now that are starting to recognize all their employees, not just that 10% celebrating a milestone, that, you know, they can use these peer-to-peer tools so that everyone can send and receive thanks on any device. Part of the social tools that we offer, you know, HR can field pulse checks so that you can find out how your new tools are working. You can gauge morale and really question, and get an answer to any question that's on your mind quickly without waiting for a big annual engagement survey. And it's not all online too. You know, managers can give out spot cards to people on the floor immediately when they see great work being done, and then employees can go online and redeem it for cool stuff. There are lots and lots of ways to recognize others. There's just a few examples of how technology can make it more inclusive and easier for you. So in summary, I'd like to leave you with three kind of final closing comments to wrap things up. The first is that, you know, this management by walking around principle isn't going to cut it in tomorrow's workplace reality. Employees are going to be nervous coming back to the workplace in the short term, and now that managers are seeing for themselves the benefits of working from home and that their people can get tasks done and be productive, they're going to be a lot more receptive to that arrangement and not view it as a special accommodation, which means that your managers are going to need those tools and training to support that workforce. So now's the time to kind of research the technologies, the platforms that are out there, and to ask your colleagues in other companies what they use to connect with their teams and recognize their people. What do they like? What don't they like? You know, get input from your employees and managers on what's working now, what's not. Now's a good time to take inventory of the ways that your managers are recognizing now, and if that's something that's going to work in the new reality, or if you have to relook at your entire engagement strategy. Lots of things to think about and to plan for now. But having said all of that, it's also important to keep in mind that that face-to-face interaction is critical. You know, we need the tools and technologies for sure, but you're also going to need a place for your people to get together. So whether it's they're in their office 2 days a week together and they need a place to collaborate, or if they're in there daily or weekly or you know, even monthly, the staff, you know, your video calls, your quarterly get-togethers, all those things are going to be really important for that face-to-face time, because you know, your culture is best. You know, it's best when people actually are in the office and see each other a little bit. So those flexible remote work arrangements enhance the experience, but for optimal engagement and productivity, you're going to want to see each other. And I loved when I was listening to that webinar with Dr. Arthur Brooks from Harvard. He was saying that we all need at least 1 hour a day of eye contact, FaceTime with colleagues. So I thought that was really good. So it just reinforces the importance of, you know, video calls and recognition platforms, ways that you can really make that connection with others. So we'll get there. You know, for now, the best thing we can all do is to stay optimistic and to communicate and start thinking of ways that we can better support our managers and our people. We're here for advice if you have any questions, you need some resources, or look at a demo of a platform, let me know. I'm definitely here to help, and I'd like to help if I can. Kenny, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah, so before we sign off, I would encourage all attendees to adapt as best as possible with the incoming changes as well as processes. Will we get through this? Absolutely. But change is inevitable and change is also good. So just focus on the positive, encourage your team and colleagues to do the same, and try to be as empathetic for each person's situation as best as possible. And, as we get through this, we'll see how the landscape is reshaped, and I'm sure we'll be in a great position coming out of it with new opportunities for everybody. So again, before I sign off, I would again like to thank Lori and Tracy, as well as the CSISTARS team for having me. I know they have put in tons of work and tons of research. So if y'all have any questions for us, we'd appreciate that. But thank you all again, guys.
Oh, thank you, Kenny. I know you put a lot of time into preparing, and you had some really good insights to share with us. So thank you so much for helping me out with this webinar. It was great to co-host with you. Before we move into the questions, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about a free recognition site that we created to make it easy for the public now to thank those people who are caring for us, that are keeping us fed and keeping our supply chains going. There are so many heroes in this pandemic who could use a little boost and a little, kind words spread in their day. Healthcare workers in particular, they're faced with incredibly difficult situations and, are probably very traumatized now and will continue to be traumatized from this experience going forward. So they need our kind words now more than ever. So we created this this free little recognition site where you can actually go to heroes2zero.com and send a free e-card to a hero in your company, in your community, or your life. If you don't have their email, you can post a quick shout out on the recognition board. And for every e-card sent, CSISTARS will donate $1 to Johns Hopkins Medicine in the race for a vaccine. So I just wanted to tell you about this site because I hope that you'll use it and recognize someone today that's really making a difference in your life or in your community. And on that note, I will see if we have any questions in the chats. If you have any questions, we'll open it up for questions now, and you can just post the questions in the chat window here. Okay, so will you be sharing the slides with us? Yes, absolutely. I will share the slides with you as well as the recording of this webinar. And I actually have a few other little toolkit resources, the infographic, and a few other things that I will definitely share with you. What are some peer-to-peer platforms? Well, the peer-to-peer platform that I spoke about was CSISTARS peer-to-peer platform. There are lots of peer-to-peer platforms out there. They are fantastic. They're a great way that you can integrate into your intranet or have one kind of recognition hub that makes it very easy for everyone in your company to send monetary as well as non-monetary recognition. If you'd like more information on that, Aaron, why don't you send me an email, and I'd be happy to do a demo with you and talk to you a little bit about what the functions and benefits are of the peer-to-peer recognition platforms. Happy to do that. Let's see if there's any other questions here. Just about the audio. So I really appreciate your patience with us as we were figuring all of this out. So thank you so much for all of you for spending your lunch hour with us. Again, I will send out the recording and some more tools to you, and take care and stay safe. Have a great weekend as well. Thank you.